And that's when I looked up, and as I'm looking up, I'm literally staring down the barrel of a Glock.
Hey there, self-defenders. If you're listening to this podcast, there's a very good chance you watch active self-protection videos on YouTube. And if you have, you've seen numerous instances where regular people who are self-defenders are called upon to use a firearm to defend themselves and their families. And you're probably wondering what happens in the aftermath. Well, I'll tell you one thing you're going to want in the aftermath is firearms legal protection. They're there so you win the fight after the fight and you're able to carry on with your life. It is the only defensive legal membership company that Active Self-Protection recommends. They're committed to helping train and educate the self-defense community. Please thank them for their support and consider them for your needs. Check them out at get-ask.com/FLP. Get-ask.com/FLP. Hello and welcome back to the Active Self-Protection Podcast. I am your host, Mike Williver, your favorite former Fed. With us this week, Deverick Woodfork. His self-defense encounter was documented on the main ASP channel. You can find it there if you search his name, Deverick Woodfork, Active Self-Protection on YouTube. You'll find it. It'll be one of the top 3 results. He also sat down with our owner, John Correa, and did a couple of short videos on the channel that are very illustrative. So make sure you check that out as well. Deverick, thank you so much for being here. How are you, sir?
I'm doing well, Mike. Thanks for having me here.
It's my pleasure. Full disclosure, Deverick and I have known each other for a little bit. Not too close, but he was in our active self-protection instructor development cohort. He had to drop out, had some family medical stuff. He had to bail out, but hopefully he'll come back at some point. I was looking forward to getting to work with him during that. My loss, whatever. It's all good. So, Deverick, do you want to tell the folks whereabouts you live?
Well, I'm living in Houston, Texas right now at the present moment.
Okay, and married, kids?
Yep, married, happily married, beautiful wife. We have 3 kids together and one outside of our marriage. And so 4 kids, nice, beautiful, happy family.
I love it. And I know at the time of this incident, which we'll talk about in a moment, you were doing some kind of, was it construction or home renovation kind of business? Are you still doing that?
Yes, I was doing it at the time. I'm not still doing it. I was doing construction and remodeling at that time. I had been doing it for about 4 or 5 years.
Real work, in other words, actual work.
Yes, physical labor every day, sun up, sun down.
All right, so I would encourage folks to watch at least the breakdown video of this incident to get a kind of a feel for what went down. It's a really, really harrowing video, and we'll go into details about that incident here in a little bit. So, Deverick, the day of this incident, you were a legally concealed carrying person in the state of Texas, and that came in real handy that day, as it turns out. How much training would you say you had prior to this incident? Were you in the military? Did you take a lot of gun classes, or was it just sort of a, hey, I need to carry a gun to protect me and mine kind of thing?
Yeah, it was exactly like that. It was, hey, I need to carry a gun and, to protect me and my family sort of thing, just like that. No prior military, no prior law enforcement. I was going to the range maybe 2 or 3 times a week, but at that time, I knew nothing about firearms that I know about now. So I was shooting a 9mm and it would look like buckshots. But I was having some sort of training and just getting myself prepared.
Okay. And how long had you been carrying concealed prior to this incident, if you remember?
About a year. About
1 year. Okay. Could you tell us what the make, model of the gun, and then maybe what caliber, what kind of ammo you were carrying?
It was a Glock 22, which is chambered in .40 caliber. I had hollow points in there. It was self-defense ammo. I can't remember the particular brand it was. I know it was like Critical Defense or something like that.
Critical Defense, yeah. Okay, so not ball ammo, real self-defense ammo.
Yes, okay. Yes.
What were you doing on that day when this incident went down? What were you had your wife and at that point 2 of your kids in the vehicle with you. It was a work van, so no windows in the back. Typical work van, you can picture it. What were you guys? Where were you, and what were you about to do?
We were at a floor department store, and we were shopping for some tile to install into our home because we had been planning on doing this for a little bit of time now. And I had finally had time that day to go ahead and try to make that happen. And we were just out shopping, minding our business, and we were going to go out to eat after that.
Yeah, very, very strange incident. And again, hopefully the people listening at home have watched the video, but you were you're parked front end in this sort of shallow driveway of this business, and you get out of the vehicle and you're just doing, you're kind of in code yellow, not super alert. You're just putting your keys away. Tell the folks what happened then.
I was literally putting my keys away. There was a little hook on my keys where I normally hook my keys onto my pants. And typically I can do that without looking down because of it was just muscle memory. But I had on a new belt, new pair of pants, and the loopholes were in different places. The belt was thicker than what I was used to. So my key, the loophole got stuck. Well, the hook got stuck on a belt loop as I was trying to hook my keys. So it forced me to look down. And as I started looking down, at the same time, I'm hearing someone demanding my keys from me in a very vulgar, demanding way. And that's when I looked up. And as I'm looking up, I'm literally staring down the barrel of a Glock. I immediately noticed it was Glock. It's crazy how your mind just remember certain little things. But I immediately saw a Glock. I was staring down the barrel of it, and I saw a 30-round magazine hanging out of it. And at the same time, he was shooting at me.
So you're getting out of the car, you hear him yelling, give me the effing keys or whatever. You turn around and he's already shooting. Like before, you hadn't had a chance to comply with him yet.
No chance at all to comply yet. It was just like he already had on his mind. He wasn't just gonna take something or rob. He wanted to kill. He had it set on his mind because even if I was gonna try to give him the keys, he was gonna murder me anyway. It was no doubt about it. This was just no doubt about it.
So I think one of the reasons we're doing this podcast is so that people can hear a little bit deeper, a little bit more than what you're going to see in a video or maybe a short news interview or whatever. So I want to take as deep a dive as I can. So rewind just a second to you getting out, you turn around. How long do you think it took you to orient yourself to the fact that someone is shooting at you? Now, it probably seemed like a longer time than it was, but how long did it take you in your estimate to go, wait a minute, someone's shooting at me? Because that's not, this sort of thing is like a car accident. No one's expecting to have a car accident when they leave their house in the morning. I've been in a couple car accidents and I'm like, well, this wasn't part of my plan. I got stuff to do, So how long do you think it took you to orient yourself to the fact that, okay, there's some guy shooting at me and demanding my keys? Was it pretty quick?
Yes, it was. I was surprised as to how fast I was able to react under that much pressure and stress, just such last minute. It was splits of a second, if I could say.
Yeah, and of course, no one's expecting a gunfight, on their way to pick up some flooring. And I assume your immediate concern was for your wife and kids. And the reason I say that is because, assuming he wasn't shooting at you, he runs up on you he's got the drop on you with a gun out. If it's you alone in the van, it changes the calculus. If he's not shooting at you, you might have been like, okay, well, he's going to get my van and he's going to get away with it and, live to fight another day. I'm not going to try to draw a gun on a guy who's got a gun trained on me already. It's a bad idea. But you weren't given that option because he's already shooting at you. What are your thoughts about your wife, your family inside the van? Because I can't imagine what that was like.
That was a horrible feeling. At the time, all I could really think about was them and try to keep them safe. Wow, it was such a difficult situation because, they were directly in the middle of it. I had no other concealment or cover other than that van which they were in, and it was a really, really, really tough situation to try to stay as calm as possible and try to beat the odds that were stacked against me in that moment. With my wife being there, I had never really heard her scream throughout the whole time or get crazy or anything like that the whole time we've been together. And she really didn't panic, but I can definitely hear in her voice that she was scared, and she was scared for her life.
Absolutely. And for those who haven't seen the video or can't watch it for whatever reason, picture a small commercial driveway, not really a parking lot, more of a driveway. His van's in the middle of it, and there is nothing around for, 15 yards in every direction. There's no cover and concealment aside from the van, which contains his family. So the dread that must have come over you, I can't even imagine. And then add to that this guy then, after you draw pretty quickly and get a shot off, he runs around the other side of the van, and he's not running away. He wants to continue the gunfight. So what happened after you got that shot off? And did you hit him with that first shot?
Yes, that first shot hit him in the leg. At that time, I really couldn't even tell that's what happened. But after watching the video so many times and just seeing it all, zooming in on it and seeing it, first shot hit him in the leg, and you can even see him grab his leg as he's going around the side of that van. And when he gets around the passenger side of the van, now he's hopping on one leg. You can see him kind of hopping and shooting at us. And that probably was where it was getting really scary at, because he did not go down after being shot. And I was by no means, so let's make this clear, was I attempting to shoot him in the leg. But, you know, it just happened that way. But you would think still if someone gets hit. I was one of those people that had the impression that, hey, if somebody gets shot, hey, this is a 40 caliber, regardless of where they get shot, they're going to probably go down. But reality hit me real fast that day. And now I know the science behind, you know, a firearm and a human body. But once that gunfight just started, man, and because that was the, I guess, turning moment, a real intense moment throughout the whole thing, because now he's on the other side of this van shooting at me and looking like he's shooting at my wife and my son who's in the passenger seat. He can't see my baby boy that's down in the middle. And I'm on the other side shooting at him. And I'm not only responsible for my wife, life, my kids, and myself, but now I have people on 45 freeway and the feeder. And it was a crazy situation, man.
So at that moment, in the middle of this gunfight, you actually were cognizant of the fact that, you know, because I think a lot of people would be just concerned about themselves and their family, but you're thinking in your head, okay, I got to make these shots count, because there's all kinds of innocent people behind this guy. That actually went through your head in the moment.
Yes, it did. Yes, it did. I mean, I even tell my wife, it's an interesting thing how aware of things I was at that present moment. I was very aware of certain things that, like you say, most people probably wouldn't have been aware of. But I was very, very calm. I was very, very just relaxed as I can be in that moment. And I was recognizing all these factors that were at hand. And it seemed like a forever thing, but it was really, I think, probably less than 10 seconds or so.
Yeah,
it all went down.
There's a phenomenon in the brain that I will not attempt to explain in any great detail, because I'm not a brain surgeon. But, you know, during times of stress like that, the number of times your synapses are firing speeds up. Your brain's taking in more information. That's why you get that sense that time is slowed down a little bit. And after a critical incident that went on for 5 seconds, and you know, you thought it took 2 minutes, and it was 5-10 seconds or whatever. And that's an amazing, and I've experienced that myself, and it's really quite something that your brain kind of slows things down a little bit and gives you a little bit more time to think. That is what your brain does after all. So Another thing I wanted to point out that is such a great teaching point is, you know, I shot him. He didn't go down. He didn't fall down like in the movies. And the fact that you're willing, I commend you for being willing to admit that you were that guy who thought, oh, it's 40 cal. It's got stopping power. You know, I'm sure if I hit him, he'll just fall over and, you know, that'll be that. So the realization that wasn't the case must have been quite startling for you.
Yes, it was. And it is. And I, you know, as a firearms instructor, teaching students, and majority of individuals I come in contact with, that's the misconception that they have too, that just because I have a gun or I have this tool that I'm going to automatically put someone down if I shoot 1 round or 2 rounds in them. You know, that's just simply, honestly, not the case, regardless of what caliber you carry.
Right. So at this moment, you've hit him in the leg. He runs around the other side of the van. You guys exchange some gunfire. How many times do you know how many times he shot at you and how many times you shot at him, now that all's said and done?
He shot at me maybe 15, 20 times if he didn't just empty the magazine, because it was like rapid, continuous fire coming from his end. On my end, I only discharged 4 rounds.
That takes a lot of self-discipline. That really does. You see fully trained cops at mag dump on somebody, you know, in a situation like that. So, and again, hopefully people can watch the video. It's a lot of back and forth, and I could tell you're trying to keep him, you know, you're not trying to get shot, but you're trying to keep his attention on you and kind of keep his fire drawn away from your family, which was really impressive. And at one point, you popped up in the same place twice, it looked like, and you're like, uh-oh, and you ducked, man. You ducked faster than I've ever seen anyone duck in my entire life. You got small really fast. That was impressive. At one point, you struck him in the chest as well. Is that correct?
Yes, that is my second from last round. Hit him in the chest, and I kind of saw that one when I hit him, and I was kind of surprised at myself. It was kind of like, oh crap, I just shot him moment. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And I seen him take it, but he still didn't go down, and he flinched and took off running. That was crazy.
It's interesting that the other part of the backstory is this guy had been wandering around that area for an extended period of time. I don't know how long exactly, maybe for an hour or more. Maybe just looking for a potential victim. He picked the wrong one, spoiler alert, but looking for a potential victim. And there was a vehicle that had been wandering around, and that was, I want to say it was his girlfriend / getaway driver.
Yeah, so he was actually at that vehicle with that girl in that car on the original video that no one else has really saw. But you can see at the beginning of that video, he's actually at the car with her, and he stuffs the gun in his pants. Then he takes it out of his pants. He stucks it into his sock, and then he gets behind that white truck where you see that white truck that was pulling out right before we pulled in. And he kind of looks at that guy, but that guy was looking directly at him. So he just proceeds to walk down the sidewalk. Well, by the time he gets down that sidewalk was when I turned down that little side street, and I passed him up. So situational awareness. If I would have just paid a little bit more attention, I would have saw this guy maybe fiddling with the gun and it didn't look right. But hey, I learned. So I proceeded to go and I parked in that parking spot. But as I was parking there, my wife was staring at that black car, and I saw the black car, but I just didn't say anything. I just was like, oh, okay, maybe it's just somebody sitting there waiting on somebody. And she was waiting on somebody. She was waiting on somebody to rob and murder someone and take off in their vehicle or whatever the case. I mean,
does this guy have any prior criminal history to your knowledge?
I do not know that. It's very interesting as to what's going on right now. Basically, a big slap in the face by the judicial system because he's still roaming around free, from what I understand, and I'm getting limited amount of information because they were basically saying that they didn't have sufficient enough evidence to prosecute him, so they were having to represent new evidence to the DA and see how that goes, and hopefully they can get a strong case to prosecute him. But they know exactly who he is because I was told that directly from the detective. So I mean, it's important. That's why we do what we do as far as keeping the Second Amendment strong.
Absolutely. So I don't want to delve too deeply into that. If there's ongoing criminal prosecution, investigation, whatever, I'd just as soon leave it. I was in law enforcement for 30 years, and I know there's tons of vagaries in the law that that can leave you completely baffled as to why a thing isn't happening. I have a friend from my agency who told me, well, I know for a fact that he was shot at by a crook, by a bad guy that they were investigating. And the prosecuting authorities in that case are not charging that person with attempted murder. They're charging him with everything but. And it's baffling. I don't understand it myself, how you can shoot at someone, the first person to shoot, you shoot at the guy, and that's not an attempted murder charge. I'm not sure what else it is he was trying to accomplish aside from attempting to murder my friend, but that's crazy. Yeah. Do you know offhand if the guy was under the influence of any narcotics or drugs or anything?
Maybe he was, to be shot twice and don't go down. I don't know what he was on, to tell you the truth.
All that fiddling around with the gun and then putting it in his sock, that's like tweaker, junkie behavior, generally speaking. All right, so he bails out, he runs away. At this point, the getaway car is nearby, but you have no way of knowing that's his getaway car. You do the right thing. You're like, okay, I need to get out of this area, and you hop into your van. You quickly back out. You bump the curb behind you, and that causes some sort of fault with the traction control, which says, "Oh no, we've had an accident, maybe," or "Oh no, we're on unstable ground," or whatever. But the van didn't work. You couldn't drive away.
Yeah, that's exactly what happened, and it was some along those lines. I still don't know to this day what happened with that. I wasn't trying to figure out at the time because I didn't think that was important. So I figured, hey, let's just get out of here and get somewhere safe where we can call the cops and get in touch with a lawyer, because that was what was important at that time. And it was interesting because after watching the whole thing and knowing that the person in the black car was an accomplice with him, it's kind of scary because she could have had a firearm and she could have just taken us out right there.
Yeah, it's absolutely crazy. You mentioned something just now that was really interesting because, not for nothing, but you guys grabbed the kids and you bailed out of the van and got the heck out of Dodge, which was, I think, the best option you could have possibly taken. Don't fiddle around with that van. We'll get to the van later. But you said something important just now. You said call the police and a lawyer. I think most people would have been wondering, do I call the police at all? Am I going to be, seen as the bad guy or whatever? At that point, you don't know that this is on tape. I would be thinking, well, the police are just going to see that this guy's shot and I'm not, and I've got a gun. Like, I don't know how this is going to turn out exactly. Because like I said, you had no way of knowing this was caught on video. So were you a member of some kind of association or something that provided attorneys for concealed carriers? There's a bunch of them out there. Was it something like that? Or you had a lawyer on standby or what?
Yes, I was, and I still am a member of U.S. Law Shield.
Okay.
Actually, what's interesting is I had signed up for U.S. Law Shield 2 weeks prior to that day. And I had heard about U.S. Law Shield and other companies for a while and just made my mind up to just sign up with that one. And I was very happy that I did because of the little bit of education that I had received from signing up in that small amount of time, the great questions that I had called and asked them, and the information that they send out through emails. I learned what to say and how to handle myself if I ever got into a self-defense encounter. Had I not, I don't know, maybe I would have, maybe I wouldn't have known what to say. Maybe I would have been put behind bars because I would have called and said the wrong thing. I think it's just a smart way to go if we're going to carry a firearm or if we're not going to carry a firearm. You never know when you're going to get into any type of self-defense situation.
So at that moment, as you're bailing out of there before you called the police, were you suffering from any auditory exclusion or tunnel vision or anything? Did that occur to you during the shooting or afterwards, where you were disoriented or where you couldn't hear properly or whatever?
During the shooting, especially when it first started all happening, I can hear my wife screaming, "What's going on?" Even though she was very close, she sounded so far away. Even though the gunshots were very close, they sounded so far away. Sometimes things seem like slow motion too. It was like slow motion, fast motion, slow motion, fast motion, just back and forth. And it was an experience, man. It really was.
So when you got your wife and kids out of there, where did you end up? Where did you go?
That was a dentist's office to the left-hand side of us, which I highly appreciate them for letting us in there, because they could have easily been like, "Nope, you're not coming in here. We don't know what's going on." But they let us in. Those people were, they saw what was going on, because as it was going on, they were looking out the window. A lot of the people in there, as soon as they heard gunshots, people were looking out the window and ducking. And there were about 10, 15 witnesses that came out.
Yeah, and you never know. Most people don't want any part of anybody else's troubles. They just as soon, like you said, just soon lock the door and pretend like they didn't see you. Turn out the lights, close the shades. We didn't see anything. Yep. How long would you say it took for the police to get to where you were? And then when they got there, were they professional? What was their attitude like? What was that experience like for you?
I'll tell you this before I say anything. I've called the cops numerous times in my life just for various things. That was the quickest I've ever seen cops show up. They were there, and I'm glad they were there within 10 minutes, maybe 7 minutes, which was pretty quick to me. And when they got there, and I knew that there were going to be protocol when they got there, understandable. But when they got there, they automatically put me up against the wall. They disarmed me. They really they did not put me in handcuffs or detain me or any of that. They questioned me. They questioned the heck out of me. At first, they were kind of rude, asking me what gang was I in and did I flick this guy off on the freeway? Have I known this guy? What type of, it was almost as if it just couldn't be me, my family minding our business and get attacked. It was something had to happen. So that was the angle they were coming at me from in the beginning. Slowly but surely, they started realizing, coming to grips realization that that wasn't the case. And especially when they realized I had my lawyer on the phone. They even asked me, why did I have a lawyer? What did I need a lawyer for? And all this stuff. What did I need a gun for? Why did I carry a gun, a taser, and 2 magazines? And
yeah, the answer to that is why do you carry a gun and 2 magazines and a taser? I mean, because you want to protect yourself, whether or not you're a police officer. Yeah.
But that's how they came at me, and it was, they almost tried to make me seem like I was a victim. And it turned around real quick. They gave me my gun back at the scene of the crime because they went off and looked for the guy, did not find him, came back, and they gave me my gun back at the scene of the crime. And interestingly, 2 weeks later, I get a call. They wanted to get it back, but my lawyer let them know that that was not law, that was policy, but it's not law.
Now, I don't know. I've never been on the other side of that. Evidentiary stuff with a firearm has been used either in a crime or in a self-defense incident. So do you know if that a nationwide thing that you don't have to turn it over, or is that a Texas thing, or because I genuinely don't know.
I don't know as well if it's a nationwide thing. I do know at that time, maybe it's changed, but I know at that time in Texas, from what I understand, it's policy, law enforcement policy, that they recover a firearm that has been used in a self-defense encounter or a crime. But in particular, for a self-defense encounter as a victim, from what I was being told, and what not only was being told, because I still have my gun, so it obviously had to have some truth to it, was that as a victim of a crime like that, I do not have to surrender my firearm. There's nothing in the law that says it.
We had another guy on the channel recently named James Guthrie. He's out of Florida, and he had a self-defense encounter at his workplace, which yours was kind of at your workplace. You were in your work van. And he defended himself and his coworkers with a firearm, and he still doesn't have his pistol back. So I wonder if the law is the same in Florida. I'll have to call him up and tell him to inquire about that. I think the overarching principle here, though, is you wouldn't have known how to answer that question about turning in your gun without legal representation. I'm sure most people have been like, oh, it's the cops, I better do it, or I'll get in trouble or whatever. So I think that's an important point to make. And if this isn't, an advertisement for people finding some kind of legal representation, ahead of time to have on hot standby for something like this, I don't know what is. So you weren't cuffed, you weren't detained, didn't turn over your firearm. I guess my next line of questioning involves post-shooting, after this is all said and done. And you don't have to answer this question if you don't want to. I understand if you don't want to. Did your wife respond to this in a negative way, a positive way, or how did she react to all this after the fact?
That's a very great question. So prior to that day, my wife, she grew up around guns. Grandfather had guns. We've seen that. But prior to that day, the idea of me carrying guns, she kind of was uncomfortable with, just due to a lot of negative programming that we were psychologically conditioned to believe. So she was always afraid for me to carry a firearm. She was like, why you need one of those? You don't need to carry that, and after that day, it was like silence. Yeah, it's like, okay, you can't say anything. Guns aren't bad. You know what I'm saying? But now it's like they're proud. I carry a gun. Everybody, my wife carries now. She has her license to carry now. She has her self-defense insurance now. She knows the importance of carrying a firearm now. She knows why. I call it the great equalizer, the modern day samurai sword, because that's exactly what it is. And it's not a tool to. It's a tool, but it's not a thing that you just use just because somebody looks at you wrong. And now they all know the importance of why it's important to carry a firearm.
Yeah, you don't use it if someone looks at you wrong, but you might want to use it if someone's shooting at you and demanding your car keys. I mean, I'm just saying.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
so, what about do your kids remember this incident? Were they having any issues, any problems? You know, lost sleep, that sort of thing, or trauma, anything like that?
So my youngest son, he didn't see anything. He heard everything because he was down low in the vehicle at the time. And my oldest son, he talks about it. With everything that I'm doing, I'm a firearms instructor. You know, he sees me training people. He sees me cleaning my guns. I teach him the importance of guns. He talks about it. He sees the video sometimes because it's everywhere. And sometimes I may be doing some editing or something, and he'll walk up and he sees it. And he literally says, I remember the bad guy shooting at us. Boom, boom, boom. You shoot at the bad guy back. Boom, boom, boom. The bad guy tried to kill us. I mean, he says those things.
Right.
He's 4 years old now. I kind of have to preempt his teacher, like, hey, I'm a firearms instructor. We were in a crazy situation last year. If my child starts talking about guns for whatever reason, it's not in a bad way. I teach him the importance of them,
Right.
the safety of them. And he saw a full-blown gunfight that he was in the middle of. So, hey, I don't know how to avoid him from not talking about that.
So after this incident, you said that your wife's family, prior to this going down, were kind of anti-gun, or at least they didn't like the idea of you carrying a gun or having a gun around her and the kids or whatever. But afterwards, they kind of changed their tune. Are there any other people in your orbit, in your sphere of influence, that you think look at you differently, positively or negatively, after this went down, or is it kind of same?
It's kind of the same. My grandmother, my mom's mom, she used to be that way as well. I remember when I was, man, I think I was like 19 or something like that. And I was living with her at the time, and I had a little 25 caliber pistol in a drawer. And I was gone one day, and she found it. And she was like, what are you doing with this? And she freaked out when I came home. And I was like, well, Grandma, look at where you live. And, she, since that day, was always on me about guns. I know you're carrying guns. You don't need to carry guns. And now she calls me and tells me, you got your gun with you? Make sure you got 2, 3, or 4 of them with you, grandson. I want you to carry your guns.
That is outstanding. What's her name?
Her name is Brenda.
Brenda. Shout out to Brenda,
Yeah.
dude. I love
Yeah.
it. That's such a great. That's why we do these shows, man. No one's gonna know about Brenda cheering her grandbaby on for carrying multiple guns. That's good stuff, man.
Brenda Johnson.
God bless her, Brenda. We love you. So, how about you in the aftermath of all of this? Did you have any sort of post-traumatic stress, or did you need to get any kind of therapy? And it's not a good or bad thing either way, you know. Was there any fallout for you mentally after this? And the reason I ask is, you know, hopefully, if somebody listening gets into a defensive encounter, they might know maybe kind of what to expect.
Yes, it was a mental stress afterwards, PTSD strongly. I still suffer from a severe case of PTSD. I don't know how severe it is to others, but I suffer from a case of PTSD. Just traumatic situations throughout life, period. I lost my mother when I was young and a bunch of other crazy stuff. And then boom, all this madness here. But that situation in particular just put the icing on the cake, because nobody expects to be in a situation with their entire family, wife, kids, and your all of your life are at stake. And you are responsible for maybe whether or not you all live or don't. And just to feel, it was like a violated feeling, almost as if somebody breaks in my house and steals something. But it was bigger than that, because it's like some random guy just walks up on you, starts shooting at you, your wife, your kids. And now it's kind of like every time I get out my vehicle, I'm paying attention to everything. I'm looking, and not just those moments, but everything. I've actually put together a situational awareness seminar, because I'm big on situational awareness now. I don't call it paranoia. I call it just paying attention to your surroundings, because I know, if anybody don't know, how quick something can happen and how quick, you know, you could be at potential risk for your life being over. Life and death could just be over quick for you or loved one.
as an aside, in high school, actually right after high school, I was managing a movie theater where I grew up out in Maryland. And one night, late, we're counting out all the drawers and everything to close the place down. There's still movies going. This guy walks out to the lobby, walks out front, walks right back in, but the doors were locked, so he waves, and I had to go let him back in, push a little, handle to open the door, and I turn around, I'm walking back, and he goes, "Hey, where's the manager's office?" And I turned around and I said, "I'm the manager." And by the time I got manager out, I turned around, and he had a gun pointed at my face. He was about 4 feet away, except I wasn't able to protect myself. I wasn't able to do anything about it. Not that I would have drawn from the drop, just saying, I know that feeling, that from another angle, from a helpless angle, and that's a terrible feeling. And I'll never forget that day. And I've been through all sorts of stuff with my family growing up, and as a cop, seeing some pretty terrible stuff. But that feeling of helplessness was pretty bad. And I'll never forget how big that barrel of that, probably a 9mm. I never did find out what it was. How big that barrel looked when I'm looking down the other end of it. Terrible stuff. So you are now a firearms instructor. So was that decision to follow that road of firearms instruction, was that born out of this incident? You decided you become a student, you wanted to get better at shooting, and at what point did the transition do you want to instruct other folks?
All of it kind of transpired at the same time, because you're exactly right. I wanted to better myself at shooting and being more prepared for unexpected situations. And I wanted to be able to better other individuals at the same time to be better prepared for situations, because I realized quickly it could have been anybody that could have been in that situation, because we were actually on our way somewhere else. And we just randomly saw that place and were like, hey, we're going to stop there. So he had been there for a while. We were not going to pull up there originally. He was going to get somebody else. He was going to still do the same thing regardless of who pulled up there. And I know of numerous people that I've seen on the news and people that I've known personally that have been afraid to protect themselves, or don't know the law, or just all type of things. And I wanted to let individuals know, not to just rile people up and say, hey, fight back, draw your gun from the drop, but let us know how important it is. We need to be prepared for unexpected situations.
So how long would you say it was after this incident that you put it in your head, hey, I need to instruct other people, I need to share this experience, and help other people be more situationally aware and to improve their firearms handling skills? How long was that?
So I immediately let go of that van that was shot up. I let it go. I put my remodeling and construction business on the back burner, and I immediately went out and found the closest class that was coming up to be an NRA instructor. I researched what do I have to be a licensed to carry instructor, and I found out what I had to do. When I became an NRA instructor, I'm now a certified Texas licensed to carry instructor, affiliated with different gun organizations, and I'm always doing training and hooking up with other instructors myself, learning up under them so I can better teach everyone else. But I realized fast.
Yeah, one of the things we're stressing in the active self-protection instructor development cohort is absolutely, as an instructor, you need to be a lifelong student as well. You need to be a lifelong learner. You never stop learning. And, fun fact, when I start a class, I'll tell them, listen, I may be the instructor right now, but I've never taught a class where I didn't learn something myself from one of the students, because we're all, you can always learn another thing, a different way of doing things. So let me bring up this rather uncomfortable topic. You are, in fact, an African-American gentleman. There is still, we could dance around the fact and say that there's not, but there is absolutely still a different outlook by law enforcement to a legal concealed weapons holder who happens to be African-American. Do you feel, if you're stopped by police or whatever else, are you a little bit more alert than maybe somebody else might be to the fact that you are who you are, and the police might not view you the same way they view someone else?
Yes, absolutely. But I wouldn't say the police in general. I would say I'm afraid of the person that's in that suit that day in that police car that is pulling me over.
Right. Well, I like that distinction. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, because I have cop friends. I was just on the phone with a few of them earlier, and not all cops are, bad cops. Not all black folk are bad black folk. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And so on and so on. But I just, there are some concerns when I'm traveling with my firearm that if I get pulled over, who am I dealing with when I get pulled over? And what is that person's mindset? So it can be a little bit uncomfortable at certain times. But on the flip side of that token, I have educated myself and I educate other individuals on how to properly deal with law enforcement encounters. So I cross all my T's and dot all my I's and just hope that I'm not dealing with the insane person on the other side of that badge.
Yeah, I like the way you said that. I'm worried about the person inside the uniform because, I was in LE for roughly 30 years in total, and in that time, I came across two people who I was sure were racist, and the only problem is, there wasn't any blue wall of silence. It's just that these guys aren't stupid, and they're not going to do anything in front of anyone overtly racist. But if you're the cop and you're in an area that's fairly diverse and 90% of your traffic stops are one race of people, and that doesn't remotely represent the demographics of that area, well, that's a problem. You know what I mean? And you could just see this one guy I worked with, and he was different agency. We're on a task force. You could just see the way he dealt with a certain group of people, and it was different than everybody else. But he wasn't an idiot. There was nothing that you could point your finger at and say, and go, this guy did that. You know what I mean? It was just, it's kind of like when the Supreme Court talks about pornography. You can't define pornography. He goes, I can't define it in words, but I know it when I see it. I know it when I see it. A beautiful a nude painting from the 14th century on the wall is not the same as something on the internet.
So you're going to get me going, but I'm going to say like this. I completely understand exactly what you're saying. And I'm going to put it in this short context. Hopefully nobody twists it the wrong way. But whenever certain things are set up by design and someone knows how it's designed, they know how to manipulate it and manipulate everyone else, even though what they're doing may be morally wrong. You get what I'm saying?
Technically acceptable, but morally wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah. By the numbers, but I mean, I think we're of one mind here. I think we both understand each other, and hopefully the audience can figure out what we're talking about. I want to ask you one last question, and then I want to give the folks a chance to get all your information and where they can find you to train, or your social media. But I'm trying to ask this of all the people that have been in a self-defense encounter. To that man or woman out there right now who's listening, if they were to find themselves in a critical incident, a self-defense incident, and their life is in jeopardy, or the life of their family is in jeopardy, and instructor Deverick Woodfork's voice is in the back of their head in that moment, what do you want them to hear you saying to them in that moment?
Oh, that's a lot. So how can I keep this short?
Yeah, let's keep it short. You take your time.
Okay. Well, one thing I would say is, regardless of how much training one may have or experience one may have, always humble yourself. Because I've run across people that woulda, coulda, shoulda, people that say what they woulda, coulda, shoulda did, but no one knows truly what they will do until they are in the heat of the moment. Regardless of any training, I will say that first, if I could. Now, the second thing is, if God forbid you do, but if you do find yourself in a self-defense situation like that, one of the first things that I can highly suggest, and I think a lot of people agree with me on this, is to stay as calm as you can and take care of business. Because one thing that disrupts and takes over and wins every time is when chaos gets in the mix. It's already a chaotic situation. Don't make it no more chaotic than what it is. Stay calm. Remember your training, because you're in a real life situation. You're only going to be about half as good if that is what your training is, and neutralize the threat. And from what someone has told me, even if you get hit, keep fighting and do what you got to do and put the threat down, and then take care of whatever it is you need to do with medical.
I don't know if you got to hear this in our class that we were in together. You had to bow out maybe before this was spoken, but I think it was Samuel Middlebrook, maybe John Correa, who said, calm is a superpower. If you can keep your head when all those around you are losing theirs, then you'll be a man, my son, someone once said. The ability to slow things down in your head and say, okay, this is happening right now. First of all, you got to get it through your head. This is happening. This is really happening. But I need to deal with it. And if I panic, if I freak out, if I overreact, things aren't going to go well. And I love what you said about, listen, you're not necessarily going to rise all the way to the level of your training. You're not going to be as good as you are on a range or even on force, because even in force on force training, you're not going to die. You don't have any fear for your life. You're nervous or, anxious, doing sims or whatever, but nobody's really shooting at you. And to have someone to come out of nowhere and minding your own business and be like, give me your keys. And by the way, bang, 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 man, you're one of my heroes. I couldn't believe how well you handled that. And I'm super excited that you were able to come on and share your story with us. Are there any other thoughts you wanted to share with our audience before we talk about your social media?
One word: survive.
Perfect. That's perfect.
My motto is, we train to survive, and that's exactly what's important: surviving. We'll take care of everything else afterwards.
Right. And leave the van. We'll get another van.
Yeah, leave the van. I like it.
All right, Deverick. So, where can folks find you if they want to train with you, if they want your social media? How would they go about looking you up?
All righty. So, All Out Tactical. I'm a little country, so I'm going to spell that out, right? All, which is ALLOUTTACTICAL.net. That's my website. You can find everything about me, on me, directly from my website, email, phone number, my YouTube, which is All Out Tactical as well, my Facebook, my Instagram, and my Twitter. Everything is linked directly to my website. So just go to my website, and I will be highly glad to be in touch with you.
And so if someone wanted to train with you, they'd also go to the allouttactical.net website?
Yep, you can reach me directly there, and I'll be glad to hook up with you and show you what I know and learn from you as well, because we're going to all learn from each other. If you would like to just go to my YouTube channel, a lot of people like to follow me on there, All Out Tactical. I drop a lot of different educational content. I have a little show called Guns and Fun that I'm working on.
Nice.
Doing some cool things. So just check me out.
Outstanding. Deverick, man, I can't thank you enough for being prepared to protect your family, and I can't thank you enough for being on the show. Thank you so much, and hopefully we'll see you again soon. Okay, gang, back with us yet again for another week. Hopefully not the last. Our friend, Stephen Gutowski, founder of TheReload.com and host of the weekly Reload podcast. Stephen, how are you, my friend?
I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm doing well. We're going to talk this week about gun sales. It seems like there's a political party that everyone says that the leader of that party, when they're in the White House, is the best gun sales person ever. Because, I have a lot of thoughts on this topic, but the idea that they're going to be successful in, eliminating the Second Amendment, and you better get a gun now or else you'll never get one. And they're the other side that says, we better get rid of these guns, or, murder, blood in the streets. And we were talking earlier offline about just sort of the general tenor when it comes to politics, and as that relates to the Second Amendment, it seems a little silly to me at this point that it's so polarized that no one's actually listening to each other anymore. They're just shouting into an echo chamber. I know it's a little trite, but they're shouting in an echo chamber. They want their opinions reinforced. That said, 2020 was a banner year for firearm sales for a lot of reasons that I'll let you discuss that. And now we're getting towards the end of 2021, and it's another good year for sales. You want to talk about that?
Yeah, absolutely. Like you discussed there, President Biden is a Democrat, right? But more importantly, he's a very staunch pro gun control advocate. He wants a lot of new gun laws. He wants a lot of restrictions on ownership and use of guns in America. And I do think that you can see in these latest numbers that has an impact on gun sales, because you mentioned 2020 there, and 2020 had all-time record sales. It's the best year ever for gun sales in the United States. And a lot of that was because of a number of factors that have since waned in importance, I would say, or at least in their shocking nature. Like take for instance the pandemic. Obviously it hasn't gone away, we're still dealing with it. It's still quite bad, but the initial shock that we all had in March of 2020, where we were seeing things that no one had ever seen before in American society, essentially, the lockdowns, the massive job losses, the prisoner releases, all this stuff, food shortages,
travel restrictions.
Just we had all these things that were shocking and crazy and made everybody feel really insecure for good reason. There's a lot of chaos going on. And so people went out and bought a lot of guns, as you might imagine, because of that. Now, 2021, August 2021, those factors have at least reduced in importance for most people. I would say there's not that level of shock there anymore. We're still dealing with the effects of the pandemic, but it's not that same level of sudden chaos. And so that motivation is still there, but it's not nearly as pronounced. Same thing with rioting, right? We saw rioting in summer of 2020, in June especially, saw the effects of that on gun sales. And while there have been incidents since then, it's not the same level of political violence that we've seen carried on throughout 2021 and into the summer of 2021. So that's the same level. That motivation isn't as strong as it was in 2020. So why are we still seeing such high gun sales? Because we saw 1.3 million guns sold in August of 2021, which is the second best August on record, second only to 2020, as you might imagine. Much higher than 2019, higher than 2016, higher than 2013, higher than any of these other banner years for gun sales. And why is that? Well, it's likely because of President Biden's continued pursuit of new gun restrictions. That motivates people to buy guns too. If they think that the gun they might want is going to be illegal to buy soon, they're more likely to go out and try to buy it. And you've seen also the president enact through the executive branch, through unilateral action, a number of real world restrictions on things like especially Russian-made ammunition and firearms. He's effectively put in place a ban on the sale of those that will slowly ramp up for the next 2 years to the point where there will no longer be the ability to import Russian-made ammunition, which is popular, very popular ammunition within the United States.
Right.
And so that causes people to be concerned he might go further and try other restrictions that don't need Congress's approval even to make it into effect.
I'm not a fan of executive orders. I'm really not. We don't have a king. We have a president. He doesn't rule by fiat. He rules by the consent of the governed. And so the idea of, both parties have done it. And I don't like it when either side does it. You talked earlier about, I think we said 1.3 million total sales in March. Is that what you said?
1.3 million in August.
August. So
yeah, it was in the 2+ million back in March 2020. That was the best month ever.
So talk to me about how we know. There's no gun registry obviously in the United States. So how do we know? How do we get that number 1.3 million? Do the gun stores report that to some central group of people, or how does it work?
No, that's a really good question, actually, because you're right. There's no national registry. So there's really no way to know for sure how many guns have been sold each month. The FBI gives an estimate for how many NICS checks have been done. So the National Institute Criminal Background Check System runs a check anytime, someone buys a new gun from a gun dealer in most states. Now, some states you can have a concealed carry license that exempts you from individual NICS checks when you're buying a gun. So that there's one example of why this is not a one-to-one comparison. And of course, NICS also handles gun carry background checks. So you get a lot of checks in the NICS raw count that aren't about gun sales. So the raw number might be, in the 3 million or whatever, but that's because a lot of states, not only do they check your background for every when you apply for your gun carry permit, but some of them recheck all of their permits every month, so they wildly inflate the number of NICS checks doing that. But the way we know that it was somewhere likely around 1.3 million is because the industry, the National Shooting Sports Foundation, they're not the only ones who do this, but they're one of the most prominent. They'll go through and look at the codes that the FBI assigns to each NICS check, and they'll eliminate all the ones that aren't gun sales. So if it's a gun carry check, that doesn't get counted in the final 1.3 million that gets pulled out. And so that's how you can get to the best estimate that we have of monthly gun sales, via looking at the background check data.
So how does it work? For example, let's say I go in and I have a felony on my record and they run the NICS check and they decline to sell me a firearm. Those aren't counted, I trust?
Yeah, no, those don't get counted as sales or as completed checks.
I'm sorry. Is it possible that you went into the gun store, you went into Sportsman's Warehouse or wherever, and you said, "Yeah, I want to buy this pistol," and they ran the check, and then you changed your mind before you actually put money down and walked out with a gun? I mean, I'm sure that has to have happened at some point.
Yeah, I mean, that something like that could happen. Yeah, I'm sure that does happen occasionally. But that goes more to the idea again that the NICS numbers are not a one-to-one. Even these NSSF adjusted NICS numbers are not one-to-one. They're just sort of the very best estimate that we have available. Because you can also another scenario is you could buy more than one gun on the same NICS check.
Right.
And like I said before, you can buy guns legally without going through a NICS check. I think there's 25 states that let you do that they have a substitute permit. Usually it's a gun carry permit. And so if you have a valid gun carry permit in some states, you don't have to do a background check every time you buy a gun, because it's sort of this redundancy of like, well, you did the background check when you got the carry permit, and your carry permit is still valid because you haven't committed any crimes that would make you a prohibited person. So ergo, we're not going to make you go through the NICS check again. That's sort of the logic behind some of this. And that's where you're not going to get every check. And obviously, most states don't have NICS checks on used gun sales between private parties, right? The system is set up to, the federal system is set up to regulate commercial sales by, licensed dealers. And so those are the ones who are required to do NICS checks in the vast majority of cases, where they're selling a gun. But if just a normal person sells a gun to another normal unlicensed person in their own state, that doesn't, in the vast majority of states now, does not require a NICS check either. So those aren't being captured as well. So it's not a perfect count.
Right. So I don't know, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I take it that all this year, if you compare 2021 to 2019 or 2018, would be a lot more guns sold, generally speaking. Is this like a new normal for the volume of gun sales, in your opinion?
Yeah, no, and that's exactly right. I mean, even some of the months this year in 2021 were higher than 2020, because 2020 didn't really see higher sales until March, right? Although even one of the surprising things is that April 2021 had more sales than April 2020. Not quite sure why or how that happened.
It could be a different administration, could have something to do with that too.
Yeah, no, certainly, the political aspect plays a big part. But yes, absolutely, you did see this new normal emerge now, because the last 4 months and 5 months of this year, you've seen sales come in at the second best ever when compared to mainly to 2020, but second best ever still means better than any other year before 2020.
Right.
which, you had everyone was waiting to see, okay, there's this big surge is going on. How long is it going to last? What is it going to look like after the numbers come back down to earth a little bit? Where's the new normal going to be? And it seems we've found the new normal, which is effectively much higher than the old normal. And I think that's going to have a big impact, not only on your gun company bottom lines, which have also seen record profits in the last year. The first 6 months of 2021, Ruger saw like a 98% increase in profits over 2020. And then Winchester saw 108% increase over 2020. So, it's a pretty remarkable time for the gun companies for sure. And that's one impact of all this. But then also just on gun, the culture in the United States surrounding guns, and then the politics surrounding guns. I think if you see sustained higher sales, that is going to have a long-term effect, likely, on the way we talk about guns in America.
Absolutely. Listen, folks, we see you out there buying those guns. If anybody wants to buy me a gun, Mike at activesellprotection.com. I'll shoot you my address, no problem. Stephen, we're out of time, buddy. Thank you so much for being here this week. Thanks for the insights. And tell the folks where they can find you.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate you